We all have both light and dark within us. What matters is which we choose to act on. That's who we really are. In this video, I will act on both urges by playing through Elden Ring's DLC twice to see whether it's better to live in the light or eternal darkness. So, let's get straight into it, shall we? You may be wondering, what exactly qualifies an item to belong to either light or darkness? And it's quite simple really. Any weapon or armor that gives off a golden aura or certain divinity to it belongs in the light. Coincidentally, pretty much all of these weapons deal holy damage, which makes sense. Darkness, on the other hand, is even simpler and can be summed up in one word: edgelord. Yup, that's it. Anything that makes you look like an edgelord qualifies for darkness. Now, it must be said that I will not be crunching any numbers when deciding which force is better at the end. This will be an incredibly subjective opinion made by me. Each force will be awarded points based off things like stylistic combat, fashion, versatility, and other various factors. Okay, so let's get the most obvious scoring out of the way. Darkness immediately earns itself 50 points because, dummy goth mommy. Need I say more? Hopefully, this gives you an idea of how the scoring will work. The first thing I decide to do on both characters is gift myself one armor piece and one weapon that are otherwise locked behind late game bosses. And that's no fun now, is it? For light, I give myself the Circlet of Light, as well as Ledder's Light Greatsword. And for darkness, I give myself the Ansbach chess piece, as well as his Obsidian Lamina. Don't forget that all paths must diverge. The path of the Light Warrior starts off nice and simple by slaying this mountainous furnace golem. Incidentally, can someone please explain to me how I even got this riposte off, because it really doesn't look like I should have been able to. Anyway, from the golem, we pick up the deflecting hard tier, which will certainly come in handy later on. From there, it's a short trip to the castle front side of Grace, where instead of entering the castle, we take the path that leads northwest to arrive at the Fog Rift Catacombs. We are here for a very sneaky hidden item that I would have had no chance of finding on my own on my first playthrough. By baiting the ceiling trap into falling on us, we can hop into the sneaky compartment to arrive at this chest, which isn't even the item we came for. No, we bait the trap once more and run along it to pick up the rather dubious stone-sheathed sword, which is completely useless, at least for now. We double back to the castle front and then travel east to take the back route going around Castle Ensis, going up and up and up, where we arrive at the Fort of Reprimand. The reason we take this path is to avoid having to fight Rana before gaining access to the rest of the map. Don't worry though, we will most certainly be back for her. My goodness, this game truly is beautiful. From here, it's a short trip through the lower end of the Shadow Keep to get to the Specimen Storehouse. Turns out you don't even need to drain the water to get there. Not sure why this water drainage got a cutscene instead of Rana. At the storehouse first floor, we take the left side entrance to traverse across this long bridge and arrive at our next breathtaking destination, the ancient ruins of Rua. Don't worry, Darkness, we most certainly did not forget about you. The Dark Path starts in a similar fashion by picking up a deflecting heart here, but this time we additionally travel southeast from the Great Bridge north to acquire the hefty Furnace Pot cookbook, which will certainly be useful later on. A hefty cookbook is however useless without a hefty pot, so we double back to the Scorched Ruins to pick up very large pot. Continuing on our path, we once again stop off at the Fog Rift Catacombs to acquire the stone-sheathed sword, which is still useless for the time being. Before heading to the Fort of Reprimand, we make sure to speak to Hornsent and start his questline, as we will want something from him later on. Upon reaching the Fort of Reprimand, instead of running through it like we did with Light, we go down under to the sewer level and take a brutal shit on this Omen Killer, who drops us a very special item known as the Iris of Occultation. Wonder what that could be used for. Arriving in Scadueltus, we once again find Hornsent and exhaust both his and Letta's dialogue, making sure that we suggest the Hornsent to Letta as her target. Just like with Light, we need to go to the Shadow Keep, and on the way there, we can make a convenient pit stop and step into the Cathedral of Manus Matia, where this creepy finger man gives us a finger whistle. Now that's not ominous at all. With most of the setup out of the way, it's time to start picking up some weapons and armor. The very first legitimately acquired weapon of light I chose comes from the OG Crucible Knight, Devonia. Devonia's hammer is not a good name for this weapon. A more appropriate name would be Devonia's Gigaton Concrete Skull Masher. Because that's exactly what it feels like when you get hit by this thing. But we managed to take her down and have a look at her bonk stick. This weapon does a good amount of holy damage, and its skill, Devonia's Vortex, conjures this huge vortex of light, very fitting for the Light Warrior. And with Big Bonk comes big points for the Light Warrior. Light earns its first 10 points on the board for no reason other than Unga Bunga Bonk Stick. But we're most certainly not done here. By continuing through the ruins, we eventually arrive at this invisible bridge where we can insert our stone-sheathed sword into this altar to acquire the Sword of Light. If ever there was a weapon for the Light Warrior, this is it. Its skill, simply named Light, gives you an additional 20% holy damage, which is the perfect buff for pretty much all of the weapons of the Light Warrior. The sword itself is pretty bad though, so I mainly used it as a buffing tool. And now, I think it's time to take on our first Remembrance boss. Rana, the Saint of the Bud. Honestly, this boss is up there with my top 3 favorites ever. I'll never forget the awe I felt when first walking into this arena and being faced with a giant scorpion centipede she-devil. Anyway, The key to this fight is staggering her into oblivion, which is why I bought our big Unga Bunga bonk stick combined with the crystal tier that gives you more poise damage. And you can see for yourself how Rana handled the Gigaton Concrete Skull Masher. Mommy, we go. Upon arriving at the Shadowkeep, we've got some business to attend to. The very first thing is to follow up on Leda's quest and assist her in ferreting out the rat and brutalizing Ordsent. 2v1 in our favor was never gonna be a problem. With his defeat, we acquire the corded robe, which I severely underestimated. This robe is insanely drippy and is a perfect outfit for a dark warrior. It makes hopping into a coffin and falling off a cliff just that much cooler. At Cliff's bottom, it's finally time for that hefty furnace pot to come in handy. We yeet the pot into the almighty chalice and access the otherwise inaccessible Sword of Darkness. Oh boy, the weapon skill, Darkness, is very similar to Light in that it looks extremely cool. However, we gotta give points to Light here in terms of viability, as buffing yourself is always going to be better than having to hit a debuff on an enemy, especially when Darkness takes about 3 light years to get off. We're not done though. Doubling back to the morally questionable Bonnie village, we head on over to the Bonnie jail to acquire an entire set, the armor and shield of Night. Goodness gracious, Darkness is certainly running away with the points in the drip department because goddamn, that is clean. Light has already proven itself worthy of a remembrance, and now it's Darkness's turn. Remember the deflecting heart here? Well, this is in my opinion the best way to fight Rana, deflecting into a well-timed guard counter. Incidentally, the Shield of Night is actually super useful in this fight too, as you gain an additional guard counter option for projectiles by deflecting with the shield and then using its skill instead of a heavy attack, which is very versatile, especially for long range. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the sheer destruction that Goth Mommy can inflict. I think it's finally time for Light to catch up in the drip department. That's where you come in, Mr. Divine Bird. These guys are actually demon birds on crack. I'm not joking when I say I had more trouble acquiring this armor than I did beating anything else. I mean, just look at this attack.
Yo!
I just got hit with the AC 130 ground and pound supreme. Not to mention, I even had Cheat Engine running in the background to up my item discovery, which is all well and good, but you've actually got to kill the enemy to discover the item. Anyway, after much pain and suffering, I eventually perfect my clay pigeon shooting technique to acquire the entire Divine Bird set. Bellissimo. Now is a good time to update the scoreboard. Darkness earns itself some long overdue points for the corded robe and the armor of night. Very drippy indeed. Light, on the other hand, earns itself some extra bonus points for the Sword of Light being outright better than the Darkness version, as well as some very clean and stylish Divine Bird armor. And with that, it's time for Inner Elam. Oh, yeah, I forgot we've actually got to kill Mesmer first. Whoopsie. Cue the music, baby.
O lightless creature, embrace thine oblivion, as shall I.
Darkness rises, and light to meet it. Both forces are now on track to obtain two very special weapons. With Inner Elam opened up for light, we can do some tricky maneuvering and obtain a very interesting weapon called Euphoria. No, not Euphoria, You-fucking-poria. Not sure why they left out the H, but hey. Meanwhile, Darkness, on the other hand, made its way over to the ruined Forge Starfall Past, where we can acquire the Ancient Meteoric or Greatsword. Oh boy, these two weapons are something else. Euphoria is actually a little bit underwhelming. To charge its skill up, you gotta hit your enemy many times, and it's rare that you ever get to full charge, but I still love Twin Blades, and I'm certainly not gonna complain too much about a glowing Twin Blade of Light. Conversely, the Ancient Meteoric or Greatsword is basically the definition of edgelord. This behemoth weapon did not disappoint, and is one of the strongest in the DLC by far. Colossal sword with the ability to close the distance in a heartbeat is most definitely a force to be reckoned with. If you think we're done here, you are sorely mistaken. In beautiful, poetic irony, the final two weapons of light can be found at the deepest, darkest pit in the land of shadow, the Abyssal Woods. To get there, we hopped into that same coffin below Shadowkeep and keep traveling downstream until we reach the appropriately named Dark Light Catacombs. I mean, come on, the Dark Light Catacombs. The script is practically writing itself at this point. This place sucks, by the way. Anywho, with the willpower of a light warrior, we make it to the end to come up against Jory, the Elder Inquisitor. This guy used to be very annoying until I discovered he can be backstabbed, which basically turns this fight into a piece of cake. Upon vanquishing Jory, we pick up the Barbed Staff Spear. Now, I have been watching a lot of Elden Ring videos since the DLC came out, maybe too many, and not once have I seen anyone talk about this weapon, and I'm not sure why. It's good, like really good. Bear with me whilst I nerd out quickly. It's a great spear, which means it gets piercing damage, which is the best in the game. It has an insane running R2 that hits multiple times. It causes blood loss buildup, and its versatility is insane because you get even more range with its Golden Arc machine gun weapon skill. Oh yeah, did I mention that the Golden Arcs also contribute to blood loss buildup and do decent stance damage? Yeah, this thing is insane and is the most underrated weapon in the DLC, in my opinion. Okay, enough nerding out. If you know where we are, then you know exactly what comes next.
The depths of your foolishness!
Poor guy spends a lifetime in eternal pain just to get impaled by another barbed weapon and then to be reverse impaled by himself. Yikes. Midra, the Lord of Frenzied Flame, is a fantastic boss and a perfect time for me to showcase why I think the Barbed Staff Spear is not only a fitting weapon to destroy a guy who was shish kebabbed for all eternity, but also a strong weapon. Enjoy. With darkness, we're just in time for another scoreboard update. I haven't really talked about them much, but both Leda's Light Greatsword and the Obsidian Lamina are super silky weapons and deserve an equal amount of style points. Those Mesmer fights were very clean. Then of course, Euphoria earns itself some nice points for its dedication to the light theme, but I think that the Barbed Staff Spear earns more at around total 30 points for its underrated factor. And the Meteoric Ore Greatsword, yeah, it's awesome. That's another 30 points for Darkness. Meanwhile, Darkness has traveled to the Finger Ruins of Rhea, where we finally begin to complete the creepy Fingerman's quest by blowing his horn and returning to Fingerman, who says some creepy things.
Gracious, the starry sky is wondrous tonight indeed. Only your fate shines brighter.
The fuck? We then emote in front of the statue and oh gosh, more fingers. Fergalicious Fingerlicious. Okay, yeah, I'm deep into the editing at this point and losing my mind a bit. Anyway, back to the cathedral we go, but this time we take a trip underground and completely annihilate Anna with the meteor sword. Good night, my sweeting. After which, it's time for the mother of all fingers. Unfortunately, I don't think this fight deserves a full run because I hate it with a burning passion. I would like to say though that this badass sword is very good at punishing Mateer with big heavy attacks and fast gap closes. Oh yeah, also the undodgeable beam attack can be easily avoided by quickly switching to a weapon with Raptor of the Mists on it. Super silky. Anyway, good night, Finger Mother. Good night, Sword Hand of Night Jolin. And good night, Count Ymir, you fucking weirdo. Then, finally, using the Iris of Occultation, which we picked up way earlier, we traded in to pick up the Edgelord Supreme, Sword of Night. Probably not the best idea to use a magic-based weapon against an enemy with high magic damage negation. But hey, the Sword of Night is an amazing weapon, not only for stylistic reasons, but also for viability. A quick slashing katana combined with blood loss buildup, what's not to love? With our defeat of Mr. Putrescence, we can pick up the Putrescence Cleaver. Now, I waited until we got this weapon before also talking about the Great Sword of Damnation that was acquired from Midra. The reason I waited is because both of these weapons excel at the exact same thing. I like to call these two weapons the NPC Annihilators. Why, you ask? Well, yup, both of these weapons completely annihilate NPCs, trivializing all of these encounters. The Putrescence Cleaver has actually become one of my favorite weapons because its passive frost buildup and heavy poise damage means it's a pretty solid weapon all round anyway. But now, it's finally time to make my decision on whether it's better to live in the light or eternal darkness. Let's do this whilst guard countering Rana with a twin blade. Pretty brain dead, I know. Also, before I forget, for anyone wondering how I completely avoided Rana's magic attacks earlier, well, she has this weird thing with her sword hitboxes for some of her attacks, and if you bait her magic attack at the phase change, you can roll into the first slash and just hug her and nothing will hit you. This creates a gigantic damage window for you to just completely wail on her. Yeah, you're welcome. Upon much reflection, I decided that neither light nor dark is better than the other. When taking a closer look at the Sword of Light and Darkness, you'll figure out that they actually benefit each other. One buffs your holy damage and the other debuffs enemies' holy resistance. This goes to show that coalescence between both your light and dark sides is always the best outcome. Just kidding, it's obviously darkness. Now would be a good time to confess that this entire video was rigged from the beginning, and Goth Mommy was always gonna take home the victory. After all, I invented this completely bullshit point system with no real order to it. You guys should have known. Arise, warrior of darkness, queen of all Goth Mummies.